The woman in your life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host. And as always, I am so excited about today's show. I have a special guest with me by the name of Ida Johnson. And most of my viewers probably know Ida. Ida does a very special program here at C Media called What's Hot. And I'm really thrilled about interviewing her. She's taken a little bit of a sabbatical, but rumor has it that she might be coming back. But before we start, I want to go over once again with all my viewers, particularly my women viewers, my Women's Spaces pledge. Now, why do I do the pledge? I got 2 or 3 emails last week and they asked, Elaine, why do you do the pledge? Why is that so important to you? Well, what I have noted in my travels as a woman is that most of us have had our self-esteem taken away from us. Why? Because we're so busy worrying about the outside world, how we look, what people think of us, making sure we do the right thing, say the right thing. And sometimes it really is, it taxes your brain. And I think it's very important every once in a while to take a deep breath and acknowledge yourself as a person. And that's why I developed the Women's Spaces Pledge. And how it was developed was through my grandson Ryan when he was about 5 years old. I picked him up from a nursery school and he started crying. And I said, Ryan, what's the matter? He said, Ryan's a bad boy. I said, Ryan's a bad boy? Why do you say that? Who said that to you? He says, my teacher said it to me and I know I'm always going to be a bad boy. And that's when I looked at him and I said, Ryan, your self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of you. It depends on your relationship with yourself. And at that time I said grandma. I mean, you can put grandma in there if you want, but basically the self-esteem depends on your relationship with yourself and your higher power. So let's look at the pledge and let's just say it to ourselves. My self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of me. My self-esteem depends on my relationship with myself and my higher power. Well, in the emails, what I thought was very interesting is that people were asking me, what do I mean by higher power? Well, you can put anything you want in there. Some people believe in Jesus, some people believe in God, some people believe in the sky and the moon and a doorknob. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you recognize that your self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of you. It depends on your relationship with yourself and your higher power. And also, if anybody wants a copy of the the Women's Spaces Pledge, all they have to do is send me an email at elaine@womenspaces.com. And remember, there are 2 S's. That's elaine@womenspaces.com. And I'll be happy to send you a copy. Anyway, that's a lot to think about, but as you know, Women's Spaces, that's what it's about. Hopefully that we're all thinking about things, and there's a whole world out there to think about, and I'm sure when I have our conversation with Ida and I that you'll see that there's just lots to do in the world, lots to think about, and lots of ways to get involved. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Ida Johnson. Ida, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. It feels weird sitting on this side
of
the
know.
desk.
Well, you know, Ida, you have such a varied background. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing to me. You're an activist. I know you're very active in the community, very concerned about education. You're also a consultant and then a producer here at C Media on your show called What's Hot. So when we start out a little bit, anything else that you'd like to fill in besides what I've said about you, and also give us a little background on how did you start? What was the motivation behind What's Hot? You started in 2001, which is almost 14 years now. So just give us a little background and anything that you care to say about yourself.
Thank you. And it's easy. The motivation behind What's Hot. At that time, I was facilitating an after school program at Brook Hill Elementary School. And the students in the program, I did that 3 days a week. I'm sorry, I did that 2 days a week. Maybe it was 3, I forgot. But anyway, the kids in the program wanted to make a movie, and the students enrolled in the program were from kindergarten through grade 6, and they were all mixed up, but they wanted to make a movie. And because a friend of mine had been one of the founders of C Media and getting it started, I knew that this place existed. So I came down here and took the orientation class, and during orientation, they bring you into the Live Link studio, which is where we are right now. And when I walked in here, the idea for What's Hot unfolded. Title, format, everything. It just unfolded. I didn't think I was going to be here forever. But that's what started it, making the movie with the kids. And we did make the movie.
Well, so What's Hot is really the title. What does it mean, what's hot? I mean, are you talking about the weather? Or are you talking about issues in the community? What does what's hot mean?
I can't say it on TV. No, What's Hot, the title includes, for me, items of interest, things that are going on in the world, things that are going on in the community, things that have made me mad. Rarely, until right now, if I were doing a show today, it would be the weather. But generally things that excite me, that generate some kind of emotion within me.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because the reason I started Women's Spaces is because it interested to me to find out what women were doing in the community. It felt like you never heard anything about the women, and I wanted to find out about them. So you're saying then what's hot actually means what is hot to you. In other words, what's going on in the community that's kind of pushing your buttons and pushing other people's buttons. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, but it's not just confined to the community. It's confined, it's the world. Whatever is going on any place that generates some emotion in me, whether it be anger, excitement, spirituality, if it generates emotion, then that is fair game for What's Hot, because it has stirred something in me, whether it made me angry, it made me sad, whatever. Emotion equals What's Hot.
Well, it's interesting too, because I've watched your program many, many times, and one of the things I notice about it that you're always talking about very important issues, and you not only give a perspective of it, but you give one person's opinion of it, and also allow people to call in and talk to you. How is that when you have people calling in? Have you had many challenges with that?
When I first started, I was doing an evening show. And I had a lot more callers in the evening than I did in later years when I was doing it in the afternoon. And one of the staunchest callers, he always called me, was a young man. He was newly married at that time, Republican, and I'm a Democrat. So of course we had varying interests. We had opposite interests. And I looked forward to talking to him because we could agree to disagree in a civil manner and have conversations. And then of course that generated other callers. But I do like having callers because that feeds me and it feeds the interest, because everybody doesn't see things the same way. So I loved having callers, lots of callers.
Well, I'm really curious, like say for example today, if you were on the air, what would be hot to you today?
Ooh, it's a good thing I'm not on the air today. Today's Press Democrat, the front page stories. Well, I don't know if it's front page. The idea that the retired chief of police is going to run for the city council, that generates a lot of heat. I don't think it's a good idea to have two ex-Santa Rosa policemen on the city council. politics is of interest to me because politicians rule the world. And it laps over into the other area, which is of interest to me, education. And this, you asked me what I'd be talking about. And there's an article in today's Press Democrat about local control funding formula. The state has changed the way schools are funded. And so watch out. But those are two of the things I would definitely be talking about.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you say that, Ida, because one of the things that I find is happening with our community is that we really have limited information. We do not have news, what I would consider news, and the only paper that we have really that goes to most people is the Press Democrat. So I see how important that a show like yours is because of the fact that you do, even though you're looking at global issues, you're also looking a lot at local issues. And you know, it's very interesting. This is going to be a very interesting race. I mean, there's so much happening on the city council. It's amazing. Well, you know, another thing I know that you've really been following also is the Andy Lopez killing. You know, do you have any thoughts on that? I know they're trying to do, it's really interesting. I ran into your sister, and she's very, very political herself, you know, and we started talking about this, and there's a lot of question. They're developing a task force, and one of the things that I think she said, and you said also, I've been there, and I don't want to go there again. What did you mean by that? Can you give us an idea?
Yes, I can. It is documented that there have been over 50 killings by the police establishment in this county in the last 20 years. And the commission that they are now saying they're going to do, well, they did that 20 years ago. There's a document, it's not even 20 years, but there is a document when the
California Civil Rights
Commission came in here, they released a study. Well, nothing changed. That's been there, done that. The police shootings are accelerating, and I am deeply offended about the militarization of society. And the city council calls it a civilian review board. We don't need a civilian review board. We're not the military. We need a citizens review board. We need to look at who's being hired, what the culture inside those departments are, and where are the changes. There are no changes when it comes to police brutality. As I said, it's accelerating. It used to happen once, every couple years. Now it's happening almost on a monthly basis.
Well, you know, it's real interesting when you talk about it's actually, just for my viewers there, the report it was in May of 2000. The report was actually issued in 1998, but it wasn't until 2000 that they actually had the pamphlet, the booklet, with everything that went on, all the interviews. They interviewed many people in the county. I think there was about, all the cities were actually involved. Mm-hmm. And what they did is, it's 65 pages, but the last 6 pages are the most impacting because they give all the recommendations. And it was very interesting, talking about, I was at the city council meeting, and I was so upset when they start talking back and forth that when I finally got up to speak, I said, all you have to do is look at these 6 pages and you have your answers, because here's the recommendations, and none of the recommendations have happened. And as I read the report, I thought to myself, maybe if they had done something back then, we wouldn't be talking about Andy Lopez and some of the other shootings. Well, just off the top, if you were to sit down and you were to give a point of view and a suggestion, what would you suggest to the city council about this?
A citizens review board, not appointed by the city council, with different faces, because every commission, every advisory group in the city, there are always the same old tired people. Okay? And being a woman, being a senior citizen, Being a person of color, I have served on some of those, and generally speaking, they don't look like me, they don't talk like me, and they don't really want to hear me. Because the people that the city council and the board of supervisors appoint to serve on those groups are, I don't want to insult anybody, but a lot of them are parrots. They just repeat whatever the language is that they've been told to say.
Well, that's pretty scary. I mean, that is scary. But I noticed that too. And actually, I sit on a few boards, and I'm the oddball. In fact, I asked a question. It was very funny. I sit on Measure O. I'm part of the oversight committee of Measure O, and I'll tell you that is, we could go into a whole program on that one. But I raised my hand and I asked a question, and instead of answering the question, I was told not to worry about it. And finally I said, wait a minute, I have a responsibility here. I have to know. And that's how I got my question answered, because I was so forceful. Then what ended up happening, the next thing I know, I get an email from the city, from Gary Wysocki, who appointed me, telling me I've been late to meetings and a complaint. And I thought, what? And I answered the complaint, but all of a sudden I realized that sometimes in some of these groups, when you speak out, all of a sudden you're considered the bad guy and they want to get rid of you. So it's very, very, very interesting. Well, there's so many things we can talk about. I mean, we could just go on and on. But one of the things that I've been go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but can we just go back to talk about those groups and representation on those groups?
Go right ahead.
And being shut down. More than anything, the people sitting on those groups are from the Northeast community. They do not have any exposure to what's going on, even Southeast, let alone Northeast and Northwest. This has been stated before. If I don't talk to you, how do I know what you're feeling or thinking? We don't socialize together, we don't go to the same church or anything. So how can the city council say they represent me when the only time they get to my part of town is passing through? So when we talk about representation and who represents who, we need to relook at, do I really want this person speaking for me, especially when it comes to how money is spent?
Well, but just to piggyback on that, I was very much involved with the district election campaign. And the same groups that were protesting the opening of the Social Advocates for Youth, down in Warwick Hospital, the same area was the same area that did not want district elections. And I found that very interesting. It almost feels like our city is divided into the haves and the have-nots, and those who have more money have more opportunity than those of us who don't. And I feel very sad because, we hear about this with Washington, but when you see it in your own community, it's really overwhelming.
It's about the have and the have-nots. Let's be real. Having lived in this community for over 60 years, in and out, but my family has been here for that long. I went to school in Santa Rosa, so I know who the haves are because I went to school with them. Their families were the haves then. And so now they're running it. They only know their own friends. They don't know me. Well, I can't really say that. But they don't know you because, you're relatively new here. You didn't go to school here. And so they don't know you, and they might come by your neighborhood. But you don't socialize with them. If you don't go to a political meeting, you have no access to them. And let's talk, that is a better word, access. They don't have access to our views, to our thoughts, to our concerns, to what we want for the city. And so, of course, they've got what they want, and so they're happy.
Well, you know, talking about that, no, it's very
Okay.
interesting, because what's happening that I think is so important is I'm part of the Andy Lopez Coalition, and what we're doing is massive voter registration to make sure that you get more and more people out there. Only 35% of the community here in Santa Rosa votes.
I know that.
So you have to start upping that. People have to pay more attention, and it's so important, particularly women. What's so interesting, in our community, we're very lucky. We do get a high percentage of women that come out, but it's not high enough. So we need more people to come out. We need more people of diversity to register. You know, there's a lot of cultures that don't even understand how important it is to vote in our own community, which is amazing to me. So I think that's going to be a first step. And of course, hopefully, the task force will be something that maybe enlivens us a little bit. Go ahead.
Back to the task force. That's a pile of horse manure. That task force, the 6 pages of the recommendations that you were talking about, it's going to be the same thing. I bet you half of the people who are on that task force were on every other task force that's ever come through this town in the last 20 years. I bet you half.
Well, I won't take that bet.
So that speaks for itself. So okay, the task force makes some recommendations. They put them in a folder 2 years after the fact that they're written, and then they sit someplace. So what good is the task force? I have no expectations that they're going to find anything wrong with what the officer who killed
Andy Lopez
did. If you look at FBI statistics, in 20 years or more, the FBI has never, every killing by an FBI agent has always been justified. Every single one. How can that be? How can that be? Every police killing in this county has been justified.
Well, let's hope. Let us hope, because there's such an outcry from the community. I know myself, I live in Indian Village, so I understand there's the Apple Valley and some of the other little issues that go on, and I see what neighborhoods can do when they come together. Mm-hmm. I see how they can make changes. So if neighborhoods can come together and make changes, then people can come together and make changes. And I encourage people who are listening to this, get involved with this issue, because it's not only affecting the Lopez family, it's going to affect each and every one of our families, whether you're a person of color or a white person, because once they, it's like in Nazi Germany, first it was the Jews, and then it was and before you know it, it was everybody that did not agree with their issue. So it's very important that we get involved.
And that is the direction in which this country is moving. If you are not a have, then you become cannon fodder and a commodity to be used. And if you'll pardon my saying so, a slave. Slave has nothing to do with race, ethnicity. It has to do with culture and beliefs. And if someone thinks they can use you and really not pay you, and what's going on in this country with wages, they're not paying people what they're worth. They're paying them slave wages.
Well, we're going to end on that, Ida. And you know something? I'll tell you something. This has been one of the best interviews I had, and I can see how you do, because I'm real hot with this conversation. So this was really hot stuff we're talking about. Well, Ida Johnson, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on Women's Spaces. And my hope is that you do come back with your wonderful, wonderful program, because you cover issues and you're so honest and so open. And I want you to know how much I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, I'll tell you, that was one good conversation that I had with Ida Johnson, who did What's Hot. And I encourage her to come on back on the air because we need voices like her. We need women who are willing to stand up and make a little noise. That's how I see it. And hopefully, being part of Women's Spaces, being one of the people that watches, that you are going to start making a little bit of noise. Well, there's a lot to think about. I want to say hello to everybody and thank them from the bottom of my heart for watching and listening to Women's Spaces, and also to remind you that February 14th is Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day. This is this is Black History Month, and to all my African American friends, I want to say this is great. I'm going to have some wonderful, wonderful programs coming up. I did 2 interviews with a woman by the name of Caroline Alexander, and we're going to be putting on shows that include Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, and some other wonderful, wonderful African American women that often we don't hear about, but on Women's Spaces you will. Anyway, this is Elaine B. Holtz. I'm the host and producer of Women's Spaces, and I want to thank you for watching and listening, and I look forward to being with you the next time.
We'll do what you must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the